Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, recently the First Minister of Scotland resigned. I want to explain a little bit more about our political system to try to make it easier to understand. Okay, so you know that the UK, Britain, and Northern Ireland at least, is made up of four separate entities. You have Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. We also have our departments or colonies, as they used to be known around the world. But the union of these four countries, Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, is the formation of what Britain is. Okay, that's often referred to as the UK or Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Okay, these four separate countries. Now, they're looked after by the central government in London. It holds together the union of these four countries. Right up until the time of Margaret Thatcher, basically all these areas were run by the government in London. And the government in London had secretaries in each area which looked after local affairs on behalf of London. However, after Margaret Thatcher, there was an opinion that these areas should be a little bit more independent. So during the 1990s, they started to make these areas more autonomous. So Scotland in particular became more autonomous than the rest of them. Why is that? Well, because Wales and Northern Ireland aren't really countries, they're principalities. They're small and are generally associated with England. That's arguable, of course. If you look at the Union Jack, our flag, they all have their flags in there, although I don't think Wales does. But again, because it was considered to be a principality, not a country. But yeah, it's very interesting. So each of these four areas were given more autonomy. Scotland was given more autonomy because it is actually a country, not a principality. So England and Scotland are the two main players in this union. And as they were given more autonomy, Scotland got more autonomy than the others. And they elected a nationalist party to look after them. So the central government looks after immigration, it looks after other things such as security issues, etc. But Scotland, in particular, has its own rules regarding the health service. For example, in Scotland, medicine is free. England, it's not. In Scotland, universities are free. In England, they're not. So you see, it's very different. And there's been this opinion that Scotland should be independent. And that's been moving forward now for quite some years. It's been headed up by a woman called Nicola Sturgeon, and she's been pushing for Scottish independence for the last 17 years since she got elected. You probably heard on the news that the Scottish government now are no longer in agreement with or supporting the central government. So there's a kind of a rift between them. And it's been suggested quite a number of times that Scotland should be independent. That is now heading towards court cases. I think the Scottish government have been blocked from having an independence election by the central government. And that was fine. I think that's happened twice now. The The Scottish government asked Boris Johnson for permission to be independent and to hold an election, and they were told no. And then they asked, I think it was Rishi Sunak, they approached again. He said no. And so there was a court case, and the court said that Scotland cannot hold an independence referendum without the central government agreeing. That, I think, is back in court and is being challenged. So Nicola Sturgeon was leading all of this, and now she is stepping aside and she's saying, well, it's time for someone else to fight this. The media here are saying, well, it's probably the end of the independence movement, but I don't think it is. I think it's likely now to get much more aggressive. Nicola Sturgeon was a lovely woman, but she wasn't really someone who was so into conflict. She was a lawyer. She very much went through the proper channels to get things done. She was very good, and she did bring about a lot of different laws and things. But what's going to happen next? Well, they're going to elect a new leader, and apparently they have to decide whether they're just going to carry on with this independence movement. There's a few options open. They could just put a motion through Parliament and say, okay, that's it, we're independent. They also could wait till the next general election by the central government, and if the Scottish government receive all the votes that they've had previously, they could just say, okay, by default, we're now independent, without involving the central government at all. But whatever way you look at it, I think that this is going to get just a little bit more aggressive. So the way I see it is Nicola Sturgeon has very firmly pointed the gun at the central government. And the next First Minister, who will be elected in very, very soon, I don't think he's going to be afraid of conflict. I say he because I have this feeling it's probably going to be a guy. I don't know why, but I think now Nicola Sturgeon brought with her that kind of femininity and peace. And I would imagine that whoever comes next is going to be a little bit more aggressive towards the central government to get things moving, because it is not going to happen peacefully, independence, it seems, if indeed it happens at all. So there we are. That's a very brief intro into our union. Very quickly, Northern Ireland have had major issues with their parliament. They can't agree on anything. So they've kind of been ruled by the central government again for quite some time, until they can get their parliament back up and running. Wales, I think, is becoming a little bit more independent. They've started talking in Welsh and changed the name of their parliament to a Welsh name, which nobody can pronounce. So I think maybe the future of the UK is probably looking more and more doubtful. But that's an update. And like yesterday, I've gone way over my 5 minutes, but I'll leave it there. See you all. Bye.